She thought he was just a poor man who couldn't walk well and needed help. She gave him food every day with her small amount of food. But one morning everything changed. Who was this man? Why did he pick her? And what secret was he hiding all this time? Sit back and find out as we jump into this amazing and heartwarming story. This is the story of a poor girl named Esther and a man who couldn't walk that everyone made fun of. Esther was a young woman, just 24 years old. She sold food in a small wooden shop by the road in Lagos. Her shop was made of old wood pieces and metal sheets. It sat under a big tree where lots of people came to eat. Esther didn't have much. Her flip-flops were old and worn out. Her dress had patches on it, but she was always smiling. Even when she was tired, she said hello to people nicely. "Good afternoon." "Sir, you're welcome," she would say to every person who came to buy food. She got up very early each morning to cook rice, beans, and yam soup. Her hands worked fast, but her heart felt sad. Esther had no family. Her parents died when she was little. She lived in a small room close to her shop. No lights, no clean water. Just her and her hopes for better days. One afternoon, as Esther cleaned her table, her friend Mama Titi walked by. "Esther," Mama Titi said, "why are you always smiling when you're having a hard time, just like all of us?" Esther smiled again and said, "Because crying won't put food in my pot." Mama Titi laughed and walked away, but her words stayed in Esther's mind. It was true, she had nothing, but she still gave people food to eat, even when they couldn't pay. She didn't know her life was about to change. Every afternoon, something weird happened at Esther's shop. A man who couldn't walk would show up from around the corner. He always came, slowly, pushing his old wheelchair with his hands. The wheels made a rough sound on the rocks. Creak, creak, creak. People walking by would laugh or hold their noses. "Look at this dirty man again," one boy said. The man's legs were covered in bandages. His pants were ripped at the knees. His face was dark with dirt. His eyes looked tired. Some people said he smelled bad. Others said he was crazy. But Esther never looked away. She called him Papa J. The afternoon, as the sun was really hot above them, Papa J pushed his wheelchair and stopped next to her shop. Esther looked at him and said quietly, "You're here again, Papa J. You didn't eat yesterday." Papa J looked down. His voice was quiet. "I was too weak to come," he said. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." Esther looked at her table. Only one plate of beans and yam was left. That was the food she wanted to eat. She stopped for a second. Then, without saying anything, she picked up the plate and put it in front of him. "Here, eat," she said. Papa J looked at the food, then at her. "You're giving me your last plate again?" Esther nodded. "I can cook more when I get home." His hands shook as he picked up the spoon. His eyes looked like he might cry, but he didn't. He just put his head down and started eating slowly. People walking by stared at them. "Esther, why do you always feed that beggar?" a woman asked. Esther smiled and said, "If I was the one sitting there in a wheelchair, wouldn't I want someone to help me too?" Papa J came every day, but he never asked for anything with his words. He didn't call out to people. He didn't put his hands out. He didn't ask for food or money. He would always sit quietly in his wheelchair next to Esther's wooden shop, his head always looking down, his hands resting on his legs. His wheelchair looked like it would break any time. One of the wheels even leaned to the side. While other people ignored him, Esther always brought him a plate of hot food. Sometimes it was rice. Sometimes it was beans and yam. She gave it with a big smile. It was a hot afternoon. Esther had just finished giving jollof rice to 2 schoolboys when she looked up and saw Papa J again, sitting quietly in his usual spot. His legs were still wrapped in old bandages. His shirt had more holes now, but he just sat there like always. Saying nothing. Esther smiled and put hot jollof rice on a plate. She added 2 small pieces of meat and walked over to him. "Papa J," she said gently, "your food is ready." Papa J looked up slowly. His eyes were tired, but when he saw Esther, they got softer. "You always remember me," he said. Esther bent down and put the food gently on the stool next to him. "Even if everyone in the world forgets you," she said, "I won't." Just then, a big black car drove up and stopped right in front of her shop. The door opened slowly and a man got out. He was wearing a clean white shirt and dark pants. His shoes looked shiny, like someone had just cleaned them. He was tall and strong with deep eyes. Esther stood up quickly and wiped her hands on her apron. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. "Good afternoon," the man said back. But his eyes were not on her. He was looking at Papa J. The man didn't blink. He just stared at him for a long time. Papa J kept eating, but Esther noticed something strange. He had stopped chewing. The man took a step closer and tilted his head like he was trying to remember something. He turned to her and said, "Please, give me 1 plate of jollof rice. Add meat." Esther quickly made the food and gave it to him. But as he took the food, he looked back at Papa J one more time. This time his eyes looked confused. He opened the car door, got in without saying anything, and drove away. The next morning, Esther woke up early. She swept in front of her food shop and cleaned her wooden table like always. As the sun came up, she kept looking down the road. "Any moment now," she whispered, "Papa J will come." But hours passed. No wheelchair, no Papa J. By noon, her heart started beating fast. She walked to the side of the shop and looked down both ends of the street. "Where is he?" she asked herself. She asked Mama Titi, the woman selling vegetables nearby. "Auntie, did you see Papa J today?" Mama Titi laughed and waved her hand. "That old man, maybe he crawled to another street. He doesn't have legs." Esther didn't laugh. She asked 2 boys selling water bags, "Have you seen the old man in a wheelchair?" They shook their heads. She even asked the motorcycle man who parked nearby, "Sir, did you see Papa J this morning?" The man spit on the ground and said, "Maybe he's tired of sitting in one place, or maybe he's gone." Esther's chest felt heavy. She sat next to her pot of rice and stared at the empty spot where Papa J always sat. Her eyes didn't leave that space. All day, 2 more days passed. Still no sign of Papa J. Esther couldn't smile like before. She served customers, but her face looked sad. She couldn't eat much. Even the smell of her sweet jollof rice made her feel sick. Her thoughts kept going to Papa J. Did something bad happen to him? She said quietly at night she sat alone in her small room behind the shop. She held the last plate she gave him, food on, and looked at it. "Papa J never misses a day," she said softly, "even when it rains, even when he's sick. So why now?" She stood up, opened her small window, and looked out into the dark street. A cold wind came into the room. Her eyes filled with water. She wasn't just worried, she was scared. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. And deep inside, she knew Papa J wasn't just missing. Something had happened. Something big and maybe dangerous. It was the 4th day. Esther was sitting quietly in her shop. She was cutting onions and setting up her table like she did every morning. Smoke came up from the fire as she boiled water for the rice. Just then, a black car stopped in front of her shop. A tall man got out. He was wearing a bright red hat. His shoes were shiny and his clothes looked expensive. Esther had never seen him before. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just walked up to her table and gave her a brown envelope. Esther looked at it, confused. What is this? She asked, holding the envelope with both hands. The man didn't answer. He just said, "Read it and don't tell anyone." Then he turned and walked back to the car. Before Esther could say another word, the car drove away. She looked left, she looked right. Nobody else was watching. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was one white paper. She opened the paper slowly. There were only a few words on it. "Come to Green Hill Hotel by 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone, from a friend." Esther stood still. Her mouth opened a little, but no words came out. Her hands started to shake. "Green Hill Hotel," she said softly. "But I've never been to a hotel before." She looked at the paper again. Her heart was beating fast. Who sent this? What kind of friend? She looked down the road. The car was gone. She looked at the paper again. Esther held the envelope to her chest. She looked at the sky. It was cloudy. But she knew one thing for sure. She had to go. At exactly 3:30 p.m., Esther stood in front of her small shop. She looked at the lock in her hand, took a deep breath, and closed the wooden door. She turned the key twice. "God, please come with me," she whispered. She walked the road and stopped a tricycle. "Green Hill Hotel," she told the driver. As they drove through the busy Lagos streets, Esther held the brown envelope tightly in her hand. Her heart was beating fast. She didn't know who sent the letter. She didn't know what would happen. But something inside her told her this was not an ordinary day. After some minutes, they reached the hotel gate. Esther looked up. The building. It was very tall, with windows that looked like glass. The walls were clean. The front door was big and shiny. Everything around her felt like a dream. 2 security men stood by the gate. One of them wore dark glasses. He looked at Esther and stepped forward. "Good afternoon, madam," he said. "Who are you here to see?" Esther opened her mouth slowly. I got this letter," she said, showing him the paper. "It says I should come here. My name is Esther." The guard took the paper, looked at it, then smiled. "Oh, Esther, someone is waiting for you inside," he said. "You can go in." Right away, a man in a black suit came out from the glass door. He walked to Esther. He didn't say much. "Come with me, please," he said, and started walking back inside. Esther followed him. Her legs felt weak, but she kept moving. The man in black led her through a long hallway. Then he stopped at a tall brown door. He turned to her and said, "Someone is waiting inside." Esther's heart beat louder. She looked at the door, then she looked at the man. "Can I go in now?" she asked. The man nodded. "Yes, just go in. You're safe." Esther took one deep breath. Then she pushed the door open. Her eyes went straight to the man sitting in a wheelchair in the middle of the room. She froze. Her mouth opened. Her hands started to shake. "Papa J," she said, holding her chest. But this man didn't look like the poor man who used to sit next to her shop. His hair was neat. His face was fresh. He wore a white shirt with gold buttons. A shiny watch was on his wrist. He was still sitting in a wheelchair, but it looked different, clean and polished. He didn't look weak or tired. He looked calm and powerful. He gave her a slow smile. "Esther," he said softly, "come in." Esther couldn't move at first. Her heart was beating fast. She looked at him again. "Papa J, is this really you?" she asked. The man looked into her eyes. "Yes, Esther, it's me." He pointed to the chair across from him. "Please sit," he said kindly. Esther slowly sat down, still looking at him like she was dreaming. "My name is not Papa J," he said gently. Esther blinked. "It's not." He nodded. "My real name is Chief George. I am a billionaire." Esther put both hands on her lap. She stared at him, shocked. "A billionaire?" she asked in a low voice. Chief George nodded. "Yes, I own many companies. I have built houses, schools, and hospitals. I've made a lot of money over the years." Esther looked confused. "But why did you pretend to be poor?" He smiled again, but this time his eyes looked serious. "I wanted to see the real heart of people. I got tired of people helping only when they think someone is watching. I wanted to meet someone who helps just because it's the right thing to do." Esther's eyes became wet. "You gave me food," he continued. "You gave it with joy. You never asked me for anything. You didn't laugh at me or walk away." He looked at her kindly. "That is why you are here. Every year, I choose 10 people who show true kindness. I help them become millionaires, because people like you can help others too." Esther was still in shock, thinking about all that Chief George had told her. Chief George gave a small smile. Then slowly, he put both hands on the arms of the wheelchair. Esther leaned forward, watching him. And then he stood up. Her eyes opened wide. Her mouth fell open. You can walk?" she asked in shock. Chief George nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "I can walk." Esther leaned back, still looking at him, like she had seen a ghost. "But why sit in a wheelchair all this time?" she asked. He looked into her eyes and said, "I wanted to see if anyone would still care for me. Even when I looked broken, I wanted to know who had a good heart." Esther's lips started to shake. Her eyes became wet. A tear dropped. "I didn't help you because I wanted anything," she said in a low voice. "I didn't know you were rich. I just felt it was the right thing to do." Chief George smiled again and walked closer. "That's exactly why I chose you," he said. Chief George stood quietly for a moment, looking at Esther with kind eyes. Then he said, "Esther, follow me. There is a place I want to show you." She looked up, surprised. "A place?" "Yes," he said with a smile. "I want to show you something. It's part of your reward. You have a good heart, and people like you deserve good things." Esther stood up slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice calm but unsure. Chief George turned and opened the door. Esther followed him. The hallway was quiet. 2 men in black suits were already waiting outside the door. They nodded at Chief George and walked behind them. Esther looked round. Everything still felt like a dream. When they stepped outside, her mouth opened wide. 5 big black SUVs were lined up in the parking lot. They looked shiny like mirrors. Big men in black suits stood next to each one. Chief George walked straight to the first car. One of the men opened the door for him. Esther stood still, shocked. Chief George looked back and smiled. "Come in, Esther." She took a deep breath and slowly got into the car. As soon as the door closed, the other cars followed behind. The group of 5 SUVs moved out of the hotel gate like something from a movie. Esther sat quietly, her heart beating fast. Where was he taking her, and what was he about to show her? The cars moved slowly through the city. Esther sat next to Chief George, looking out the window. She saw busy people walking, shops open, buses moving, but her mind was full of questions. Where were they going? After about 30 minutes, the cars turned into a clean, quiet road. The buildings here looked new and nice. Glass walls, shining signs, fresh paint everywhere. Then the car stopped. Chief George opened the door and got out. A guard quickly opened Esther's door. To come, Chief George said, smiling. Then her eyes stopped. Right in front of her was a very big and beautiful building. It was not just a shop. It was a multi-millionaire luxury restaurant, the kind of place where only rich people come to eat. It stood alone, wide and tall, with glass windows that went from top to bottom. The walls were white and smooth like marble. The doors had shiny gold handles. There were flowers at the entrance. Esther's mouth opened. She had never seen anything like this in her life. But what shocked her the most was the sign. It said Esther's, place home of sweet meals. Esther took a step back. She looked at the sign again to make sure her eyes weren't playing tricks. Is this real? She asked in a low voice. Chief George nodded gently. Yes, it's yours, mine, she whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bunch of keys, stretched them toward Esther, and pointed at the door. Go inside. Esther took the keys and walked slowly to the door. Her hands were shaking. She opened it. What she saw inside made her cover her mouth. The floor was shining. The chairs were big and soft. The tables looked like they were made from glass and gold. There were lights on the ceiling that looked like stars. The air smelled fresh. Everything was new and perfect. There was a big kitchen at the back. Inside she saw gas stoves, clean pots, deep freezers, fridges, and even uniforms for workers. She turned slowly to look at Chief George. Her eyes were full of tears. You bought all this for me. Chief George walked in and stood next to her. Yes, he said softly. You fed me with your small money when you had nothing. Now I want to give you a place where kings and queens will come to eat. You will never suffer again. Esther dropped to her knees. Her hands covered her face. She was crying, but they were happy tears. I don't know what to say, she said. You don't need to say anything, Chief George replied. Your kindness already spoke for you. From that day, Esther became the boss of a big food place in Lagos. It was not like her small roadside shop anymore. This place was grand. The floors were shiny. The walls had nice lights. The chairs were soft and clean. Music played softly in the background. People felt peace once they stepped in. She didn't cook anymore. She didn't serve food. Professional cooks handled the kitchen. They wore white coats and hats. Waiters wore nice uniforms and smiled as they served food. Esther just sat in her office upstairs. Her name was on the door. Her picture was on the wall. Everyone respected her. But even with all the money, comfort, and fame, she never forgot where she came from. She never forgot Papa J, and she never forgot how kindness changed her life. One morning, her manager walked into her office. Madam, he said, the food truck is ready. Esther stood up. Let's go, she said. Outside the restaurant, a big white van was waiting. On the side of the van was a name, Esther's Food, Love, Feeding the Hungry. Esther had started a charity. Every week, her food trucks went around the city. They gave free food to poor people under the bridges, near bus stops, around markets. People lined up with smiles. Some had no shoes. Some were children. Some were old men. Esther walked to each one and gave them warm food. She said, "Eat well. You are not forgotten." One of her workers whispered, "Madame, why do you do this?" Esther looked up slowly. She touched her chest softly. "Kindness brought me here, so I must send kindness out again." The worker nodded quietly, and as they all watched the people eat and smile, the sun shone gently on Esther's face. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Chief George. Thank you for seeing me." Then she turned, walked back to the van, and drove off to feed the next street. Her life had changed forever, but her heart stayed the same. This story teaches us one powerful lesson. Kindness is never wasted. You may not have much, but when you give from a pure heart, your reward will find you when you least expect it. What did this story teach you? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. I would really love to read from you. And guess what? There's another very interesting story coming in a few days. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to know when it drops. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Someone out there might need to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your time and support. See you in the next story.